We are under 25 days until opening day in the major leagues, and expectations are fully beginning to build with this Phillies team. As we continue to get a little bit more of an outlook for what this team looks like in spring training, including some notable shakeups for the core members of this team, I do want to break down how this team can take the next step this season and what I believe are the keys to the Phillies going deeper in this playoff year. It has been a more uneventful offseason than most of us expected to this point, but I still believe in this team's talent, and this team has been one of the best teams in baseball the last couple of years for a reason. But I do want to dive into what is changing within this Phillies team, with the biggest topic of conversation having to do with the lineup. That we know that this core is kept intact, but there are a couple internal changes that do seem like they're set to take place. And I do want to talk about some individual guys who need to take that next step for the franchise. So first, I want to start off with this take from our guy Luke Arcani, who tweets out the Phillies versus Yankees. Unfortunately, the Yankees did take care of business, 12-3 final score tonight. But he says this is how the top four of the lineup should look on opening day. And what they rolled out today was Trea Turner batting leadoff, Bryce Harper batting second, Alec Bohm at third, and Kyle Schwarber at fourth. So there is a lot to like here that you do stagger the right, left. I've always wondered, and me and Luke have kind of theorized this, if there was a little bit of pushback from Bryce Harper directly of not hitting third. I'm wondering if that was a part of the equation. But the biggest change that does seem clear is that they are going to try and maximize the production of Kyle Schwarber with some base runners in front of him. We've seen Trea Turner have experience at the leadoff spot, and I do wonder if this could get him going in a way that he has not fully in a Phillies uniform to this point. As far as Trea goes, and to reflect on his stats last season, that he had 21 home runs, just 62 RBIs in his 505 at-bats, 149 hits there, 98 strikeouts, entering his age 32 season and still under contract for quite a long time. Trea Turner was brought here to be a foundational piece of this Phillies team. He's not supposed to be just a good player. He should be looked at as one of the guys, one of the Bryce Harper level guys that for this team to be correctly produce as designed, it involves Trea Turner being that level of guy, and we have yet to see it in a Phillies uniform. I do wonder if the shakeup in the order, and I do think, sometimes there is too much made about this, but in this specific situation, returning him to a bit of normalcy, having him a chance to, see pitches from a different angle, get the first crack at the plate, could change a little bit of the outlook for him. Certainly not a foolproof plan. Trea Turner is who he is, but they need him specifically to take that next step this season. He was bad in his first season in Philly. He was okay in his second season. They need him to be legitimately good for this season to go right. But it is not just on Trea Turner. I do want to reflect on not just the changes with Max Kepler being the main topic of conversation, but a couple guys who also need to take that next step, with Alec Bohm at the forefront of the conversation here. So first, I want to start off with this article that writes, the only change that was made to the projected starting lineup over the winter was signing outfielder Max Kepler. He is projected to take over as the starting left fielder, a position that he has never played as a professional. The other 7 spots in the field are going to be occupied by the same players who held those spots during the 2024 campaign. One of those players who is going to have a lot of attention on them is third baseman Alec Bohm. An all-star in 2024, he was the subject of a lot of trade rumors this past winter. Looking to shake up their lineups, moving him and his increasing salary was something the team strongly considered. And it continues on to say, however, the asking price was reportedly very high, which led to no deal getting done and him remaining as the team starter at third base. It wasn't the worst outcome for the team, as Bohm is one of the better starting players in the league at the hot corner. Joel Reuter of Bleacher Report placed him at number 9 in his rankings of the starting third baseman in the league. That feels like an appropriate spot for him to be, as he still needs time to prove that he can produce at an all-star level for the duration of a campaign, not just the first half. Bohm was incredibly productive in the first half, earning an all-star nomination, recording slash lines of 295, 348, and 482 with 11 home runs, 33 doubles, and 1 triple. He was a run-producing machine with 42 runs scored and 70 RBIs, and it truly was a tale of two halves for Alec Bohm last season. If you can give that production that he gave in the first half of the season, you are signing up for a perennial all-star at third base. The reality is, though, I'm not sure if he is that guy. If you just, pin me down preseason and told me to predict what Alec Bohm's stat line would have looked like last year, it would have been worse than what he ended up producing. And to give those full numbers for Bohm specifically last year, again, it was a tale of two halves, but he finished with 15 home runs, 97 RBIs, and his 554 at-bats had 155 hits there. He will be 29 this season. He did strike out 86 times, a guy that, while he's not the biggest culprit on the team by any means, I still think could have a little bit of adjustment in his plate approach and being a little bit smarter at the plate. But the reality is they need Alec Bohm to stabilize a bit. We saw the peak and we saw the valley for what he brings to the table. You got to figure out what that middle ground is and who he really is as a baseball player. And it's particularly interesting to me to contrast it with Bryson Stott. We know that these guys have kind of been connected with the youth movement and all that, those conversations that circle around two of them. If you'd asked me preseason, which one of these two take the next step this year, I would have picked Bryson Stott 10 times out of 10. Now, there is some reason to be optimistic that Stott could still take that next step. There is an injury that he was dealing with last year that he seems to really be attributing to a lot of his struggles. Obviously, whenever you have any sort of issue in your hand or arm, that it does impact the way that you play baseball, swing a bat, all those things. So I will give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt there. But the reality is the production that we saw from him was not quite good enough either. And to lay out stats or Stott stats on the season, he had just 11 home runs and 57 RBIs in his 506 at bats, 124 hits there. It did feel like his power took a significant hit last season, that he was not driving the ball the same way. And it was much more of kind of just, bloop hitting and small ball, which while Bryson Stott, I think probably that is sort of the outcome, that he does trend more in that direction than a legitimate power threat. There is some pop in his bat that we've seen in past years that really wasn't there at all last season, and that is something that's concerning to me. And those two specifically have to take a step forward. And Bryson Stott specifically, it has to be a bounce back season for him. This has to be a year that he's looking at as a defining career type of season for him. If he wants to be the long-term second baseman, and I do think that he has earned at least, the clear pathway to that being an option, you got to make sure that you prove it with both sides of the ball, not just in the field, but at the plate. And I think that gets magnified, to be perfectly honest, by Trea Turner not being the most pristine defender at shortstop there. Turner, I've arguably been more disappointed with him in the field than him at the plate, which is saying something there. I thought this guy was labeled as like a potential future Gold Glover. Do not see that whatsoever. I think I could make a pretty convincing case that if you just want to talk about maximizing the Phillies' defensive potential, the answer would be to put Trea Turner at second base and allow Bryson Stott to stay shortstop. Now, granted, it does seem like that's something that's very important to Turner, that he wants to play shortstop. I get, shortstop, king of the infield, all those type of things, that you want to be that guy. So I think this was very clearly laid out when the contract was initially signed, that he would be the shortstop of the future, but just a little bit of food for thought there. Now, to continue on in this article, which mentions the downfall of Bohm last season, it says, unfortunately for the Phillies, his production fell off a cliff in the second half. His power disappeared as he managed a slash line of just 251, 299, and 382 with only 4 home runs and 11 doubles. 27 RBIs were recorded as he wasn't as impactful of a producer in the middle of the order. That inconsistency is what makes Bohm a fringe top 10 third baseman, not ascending into the top 5. He certainly has the skill to do so and is in a great spot to produce in the middle of a potent Philadelphia lineup. Bohm is a player to keep a close eye on, as he could be playing for his future with the franchise. Now, when we have these lineup conversations here, which I already pulled up, this currently has Bohm slated as that third hitter. At his best, that makes complete sense to me. At his worst, that's a pretty scary thought, as teams are straight up not going to pitch to Bryce Harper with the desire to get to Alec Bohm. Now, Kyle Schwarber is going to be there at cleanup. I would like to see him at cleanup. We've seen him lead the MLB in home runs in a Phillies uniform already. The pop is there, and I haven't been the anti-Kyle Schwarber bat and leadoff. Once again, I am a subscriber of the theory of Rob Thomson, that there's no better way to start a game than being up 1-0. I do think the walk rate speaks for itself for Schwarber, but I do think he could do some real damage in that 4 spot, and I like how open-minded he is to helping whatever the team needs there. But will be interesting to see how that is, and directly how Bohm looks to start this year, I think is going to dictate the plans from here. We know Aiden Miller hanging over his shoulder, that kind of thought in the back of his mind. Miller did not particularly shine, I feel, at this stage in spring training, and the brief glances that we got in him in the Grapefruit League there. I don't think he's going to be ready this year, which probably buys a little bit of time for Bohm, but something to note, that was kind of the dance, and why I think they elected to just bring Bohm back this year, is you believe you have your third baseman of the future coming up soon. There doesn't make much sense to make a big trade, invest a significant amount of money in a guy for whatever amount of years that wants. Like Alex Bregman was a guy that we talked plenty about. If you were to do that and hand him, say, a 5-year contract, well, Miller's going to be ready by the time that contract is coming to an end. So maybe it is best to have Bohm be like the bridge guy himself, that there is not this middle ground. You just directly pass it there. But nonetheless, did want to reflect a little bit on, I'll start off with Luke's take here that initially got me fired up about this. And he doing this to shout out Crossing Broad, who Luke writes for. He said, the question he was asked on his mailbag was, what's your hottest Phillies take for the season that you've been too scared to say out loud? He said, I've got a few in a chamber, so I'll give you 3 pretty hot ones. I can't spoil all of the hot ones. The story is coming here soon at Crossing Broad. But number 1, Trea Turner leads the team in OPS. Would love to see that happen. Number 2, we'll be campaigning for Max Kepler in the All-Star game in June, which I do think is a spicy take there, and Bryson Stott to hit over 300. All would be great outcomes for this Phillies team. And to give a little bit more context on the Kepler conversation, they want to pull up this ESPN article when they first signed him to set the stage. And it says Kepler, 31, spent the first 10 years of his career with the Minnesota Twins, tantalizing with physical tools and providing solid defense. Over the past decade, Kepler has hit 237, 318, and 429 with 161 home runs and 508 RBIs in 1,052 games. Pretty good production there. Kepler missed time because of injuries to both knees in 2024 and hit 253, 302, and 380 over 105 games. Kepler, who was expected to spend most of his time with the Phillies in left field, had a career best season in 2019 when he hit 252, 336, and 519 with 36 homers and 90 RBIs. Really impressive season there. The Phillies, whose outfield production ranked in the bottom third of Major League Baseball this year, entered the offseason looking to shake up their offense after the NLDS loss to the New York Mets. With Kepler in the fold, Philadelphia could shift Brandon Marsh to center full-time while Nick Castellanos patrols the right. And I do believe that will be the full plan for the outfield here. It is just fully dependent on the outlook for how good can Max Kepler truly be. He did rip a home run in spring training already, and that thing was cooking off his bat. That was like a line drive home run that kind of looked like it took somebody out in the crowd, so hopefully everyone is okay there. But there is some reason to be optimistic about Kepler. I'm not ready to push the All-Star campaign just yet, and we should mention the fall off last year was legitimate. That in his age 32 season, just 368 at-bats, 8 home runs, and 42 RBIs there. Just 93 hits on the season overall. But there is a change in scenery, which I do think helps guys. I think getting to a team where there are expectations can sometimes accelerate the production of a player, where there is, obviously being held against the fire a little more, and there are expectations and a standard that isn't the case for every MLB team. But going to approach this open-minded for Max Kepler. I've been a little skeptical of the signing, been even anti the signing, and frankly, my expectation coming to the offseason, I think he's in that similar tier to a guy like Austin Hayes. So with that being said, it kind of surprised me that they didn't just re-sign Austin Hayes and try that again. But nonetheless, I will approach this open-minded, and maybe Max Kepler is that missing piece. The reality is, they got to get some level of production from this outfield, not just Nick Castellanos, that it has been too poor in recent years. Whether that does mean Johan Rojas taking the next step of the plate, whether it is Brandon Marsh being a little bit more consistent with his at-bat as well, or if it is Max Kepler having a career season in this new destination, that needs to happen for this Phillies team. So when answering what is the difference this year, what makes this Phillies team better than past seasons, it is all about internal growth. That they need each and every one of these guys to look themselves in the mirror, have a hard conversation, and get ready to get better at baseball, because each of these guys needs to take that individual step forward for this team collectively to have a chance to be mentioned with the MLB's most elite. But let me know in the comments here, which of those names or which of those guys you have the most optimism for actually taking those next step. Do you think it's a Bryson Stott career here? Will Trea Turner, the $300 million version of Trea Turner, finally show up in Philadelphia? Is it Max Kepler that is that much of a difference maker? Or will Alec Bohm put a full season in the way that it looked like for the first half of last year? Which of those do you think is possible? Which are completely out the window? Let me know in the comments below. As always, appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in. Make sure you smash that subscribe button if you have not just yet. It is almost the real Major League season right around the corner. So let's get this Phillies Digest family growing. Make sure you're hitting that like button as well. I'll be back talking with you next time right here on Phillies Digest. Peace.